Well, we discussed some of the thank you again to BYU and what they did. West Virginia, Texas found a way to get through Wyoming, but there were some like, what in the world? And one of those was Oklahoma State against South Alabama. Jacob Unruh joins us for the Oklahoman on 365 Sports. Jacob, thank you very much for your time. What is the mood in Stillwater, Oklahoma?
It depends on who you ask what the mood is around here. If you ask the fans, it's the sky is falling on the program, and it's panic and gnashing of teeth and whatever you want to say. Mike Gundy today, though, said that, when he was asked, there's obviously minor problems that could be fixed, but can you fix the major problems? And he said there are no major problems. So after looking at film and stuff, it feels like everything is correctable. And so it really depends on who you ask, but it was a very bad loss on Saturday, and especially the way that it happened. And so I think the mood around the program this week is going to be very serious, very businesslike. Like it already is, but I think it's going to be more so this week. They're more focused on fixing everything they possibly can because they've got an Iowa State team that offensively has struggled, but still pretty good defensively coming this week. And it could be a defensive slugfest, rock fight, whatever you want to call it this week that I think OSU knows they have to win.
When you say that, I almost see the Spider-Man meme of him and Dabo Sweeney kind of pointing at each other right now. But Jacob, and none of the three quarterbacks are really setting the world on fire, and they were not in that game at all this weekend. So I know he's got to be optimistic, and he can't just go out there and be like, listen, we stink. We should give up football. I give up. I'm going to go move to the desert. But, there's uphill climb for the rest of the year, right?
Yeah, I think, as people want to point to the quarterback, playing three quarterbacks as the issue, and really the biggest issue is their offensive line has just not been any good. And they made changes to it, the scheme this offseason. We're very high on it coming this season. Gundy still says he feels like the offensive line's better than it was last year. But the offensive line still has struggled massively, and it didn't give any ability to run the ball last week. It didn't give any protection to the quarterback. They couldn't get anything going. And that's the biggest issue right now. That's the most concerning issue to me besides quarterback. A couple spots down the list on that. They've got to figure out the offensive line. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is if there's no protection. And so that makes it an uphill battle because I'm not 100% sure that's a fixable thing, especially in a short amount of time like this week. To get that figured out. And so that's what's going to make it such a tough battle.
Jacob, what was that just atmosphere like in Stillwater as that was unfolding? Because I saw the score come across and I was like, what? It's one thing to lose, but to lose 33-7. And I know there was, apparently a good crowd there and all of that. Gundy commented on that in the post game. And so just what was that like to watch it unfold live and in person from the Oklahoma State point of view?
I think they were very frustrated because, after Alan Bowman threw his interception and he came out for his fourth series as planned, they booed him really heavily. Fans booed him really heavily. And then when Gundy came in, it was almost a standing ovation. So the fans were really into the game. They hung around for a while, but you could tell they started getting really frustrated. There was a lot of booing throughout the night for various reasons. I think they were just kind of fed up with the offense not being able to do anything. And it was very frustrating to watch. And so, I'll be interested to see if they can, recover this weekend. And then they got a bye week, and then, home game on Friday night against Kansas State will be really massive. So, but this was pretty disheartening for a lot of fans.
Jacob, there was last year with all this drama, they had the win in Waco. And then after that, the wheels fell off. And you hear about the rot that eventually the attrition. And on top of that, injuries. And at one point, maybe on the kick coverage team, they had nothing but freshmen or those who had not played. Did they react well enough, in your opinion, to that? Paul brought up the transfer portal. But did Gundy just stick his head in the sand?
No, I don't think so. I think they worked to rebuild the roster. I think they're a little slow to adjust the portal in some ways. But I don't think he stuck his head in the sand. I think they've, learned from some of that. I think that's why we're seeing three quarterbacks in a lot of ways, because I think it's trying to keep a guy like Garrett Rangel from leaving because he's not getting an opportunity quick enough. I think that's why you're seeing three running backs. I think that's where we're seeing a lot of this as they're trying to motivate players to stay, get them involved, get them developed, add depth, and avoid the portal issues again that they had this offseason.
So, Jacob, as they get into the teeth of the Big 12 schedule, how long do you think before they settle on a quarterback, or they continue to ride the merry-go-round until the end?
I think we're going to see. I'm starting to lean towards what we'll see after the bye week, a quarterback decision, because I think Gundy expressed today that there's that concern too that the longer you go, the more it hurts the eventual starter that they were losing the number one team reps in practice, because you're splitting those number one reps between three guys right now, and you're not going to get those back. And so I think a decision will come sooner than later at this point, but we won't get one this week. I think you'll still see the rotation. It's going to be said as much today, but I think out of the bye week, maybe there might be an opportunity to name a starter.
So you mentioned that it all kind of starts with that offensive line. How do they get that better and going, and how do they improve? I mean, it's hard to do mid-season, right, Jacob? There's no transfer portal to go grab a guy right now. So what do you do if you're Mike Gundy and trying to correct that as best you can?
I think they've shuffled some things they shuffled things in the game and moved Dalton Cooper, a Texas State transfer. They moved from Oklahoma. They moved him to left tackle, his natural position. I think that helped a lot. They did some things like that. And in a game that on the touchdown drives that they had a lot of success with. So maybe do something like that. But there's not a guy that can cover it up. There's not a quick answer. The running backs are talented, but they're not, NFL ready yet. They're not those guys that are going to get those extra yards when the line is struggling like it is. And they don't have a Spencer Sanders type runner at quarterback. Gunnar Gundy's faster than the other guys that can run a little bit, but he's not Spencer Sanders, who clearly covered up a lot of issues in the last couple of years with this line, with his ability to move. So you got to start by just finding the right personnel that you feel good to know they can go and be physical and open up some lanes, because otherwise it's just going to be the shuffle more and more. I mean, they've already shifted the tight end in. They've got the fullback in. They're doing everything they can. It's just, they've got to figure out the right mix of guys up front.
So Iowa State, it's not like they're coming in just guns blazing either. This has got the potential to be just a rock fight. What are your expectations, and what, based on what you know about Iowa State, kind of feeds into how you think this game goes and how Oklahoma State matches up?
It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game. I think it's interesting because, Brian Nardo, the new defensive coordinator at OSU, learned the 3-3-5, the new scheme for OSU, from Iowa State. So now they're going against each other. So I think that's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to, really be fascinating to see how those teams respond against those defenses that are very similar. They're different, but they're similar. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be entertaining in a lot of ways, but I think you're not going to see a ton of points.
Jacob, I like Mike Gundy and what he's done there, the stability, I think, other than what Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. But is he bulletproof?
Oh, I don't think anyone's bulletproof, right? He's got the contract that keeps rolling over, but I don't think he's bulletproof. I think, I think if things continue, if they had another poor year like they did last year and it builds up, not saying this year, but they keep building up for a couple more years, then there's no way he's bulletproof. So I don't think anyone's bulletproof, but I especially don't think Mike Gundy's bulletproof.
Jacob Unruh The Oklahoman on Oklahoma State after the shocking and also lopsided loss to South Alabama.
Jacob, I don't like to be all negative, Nelly, and I know that's easy to do right now. And, hey, same thing here in Waco with the start that Baylor's off to. But what have been some of the bright spots that you at least can kind of glean from the disappointment and focus in on moving forward here?
I actually think the defense is pretty good. I think that's a good early bright spot for them. I think the defense is taking a lot of good steps forward. They're tackling better than they had some issues in that early. They fixed that for the most part. They got gashed a little bit this last week. But I like what they're going in a lot of direction. Colin Oliver is turning into a monster at linebacker. I think that's been huge for them, especially the last 2 weeks. He was kind of held in check that first week on purpose, kind of don't show a lot of stuff. In the last 2 weeks, he's really started to open things up with him and get things going. And so I think that's the bright spot. The secondary's been pretty good overall. I think, I think the receivers have been good too, for the most part. I like what I've seen out of Dejon Stribling, who's been a guy that has been a very big playmaker coming from Washington State. And, he got hurt this last week, and so I think that hurt passing game a little bit too, but I really like what I've seen from him as a playmaker. And Jaden Bray had a big drop, but I think he's really coming along. And they just have to find ways to get guys like Ollie Gordon and Brendan Presley more involved, because those guys are really electrifying players for them when they have the ball in their hands. So they struggle to get those guys involved, and I think to get those, there's another bright spot.
Jacob, thanks for jumping on with us when you did. Have a great week, and good luck moving forward. We'll talk to you again down the road.
All right, thanks, fellas.
Thank you, Jacob Unruh, the Oklahoman on Oklahoma State. Let's see, everyone's